You're home earlier than usual. Nothing dramatic. Meeting ended early, traffic was okay, you got back at 6:47 instead of 7:30. 43 minutes earlier than normal. That's the entire reason any of this gets discovered. 43 minutes. You put your bag down. Purse isn't home yet. Your roommates. The shared laptop is on the kitchen table. It's open. Screen on. Browser active. You need to check something for work and your own laptop is in your room and this is already unlocked and right there. Practical. Completely ordinary. You lean over to type in the search bar and you notice the tab that's open. Reddit. Profile page. Username. You clearing their tenant. And something about that username snags your brain before you understand why. Tenant. You both rent. You've both been referring to yourselves as tenants in conversation lately because you've been dealing with a landlord issue. You and Marcus. Not significant on its own, but it snags. You click on the post history. Not because you've decided to snoop. Because you're standing there and it's open and you click. The way you click on anything that's already on a screen. The first post at the top of the list is titled, Month 18 Update, he finally trusts me completely. He trusts me completely. You stay very still for a moment, and then you sit down, and you start reading from the top, and you don't stop for the next hour and 47 minutes. By the time Marcus gets home at 8:23 p.m., you know everything. And you haven't moved from that chair. And when he opens the door and says, hey man, how was your day? You close the laptop and say, pretty good, yours? Like you always do. Like nothing. What you've just read in an hour and 47 minutes. We're gonna read it together. Piece by piece. From the beginning. Because you deserve to understand every part of it. And because there are parts of it that are going to make you feel things you don't have easy words for. That's okay. Stay with me. So the apartment, 2-bedroom place on the 3rd floor of a converted building in a part of the city that's neither cool nor bad. It's just the part where the rent is manageable and the commute to downtown is 20 minutes by bus. You'd had it for 2 years before Marcus came in. Your previous roommate had moved out for a relationship and you needed to fill the second room or upgrade to a place you couldn't quite afford solo. Classic situation. You posted on a few platforms. Purse responded within 12 hours. He came to see the place on a Thursday evening. Seemed fine. That's genuinely the most accurate word for it, fine. Normal. He had a job, he was clean, he was polite, he didn't say anything weird, he asked reasonable questions about the building and the lease terms. You asked your usual screening questions. He answered them all straight. By the end of the visit, you decided he was the best of the 4 people you'd shown the room to, and you offered it to him. He moved in 2 weeks later. That was 18 months ago. And for 18 months, Marcus was a perfectly adequate roommate. That's the thing that you'll keep wrestling with after all of this. He wasn't obviously awful. He paid rent on time. He kept his side of the apartment clean. He wasn't loud. He didn't steal your food. He was present without being intrusive, which is honestly the standard you want from a roommate. You told a friend once when asked how the living situation was, honestly, I got lucky, decent guy. You think about that now. Decent guy. You said that about this man. To another person. You meant it, but here's what you didn't know about Marcus. 3 years before he answered your apartment listing, Marcus had been the roommate in a different apartment with a different person. That arrangement had ended badly, not violently, not dramatically, but in the specific grinding way that happens when 2 people in close proximity have incompatible expectations and neither of them handles it well. The other person had eventually gotten Marcus evicted through a formal complaint process. Marcus had lost the apartment. He'd lost the security deposit. He'd been, in his own account of it, destroyed. That's the word he used. On Reddit. You find all of this out from his posts. What you also find out from his posts, Marcus had decided that wouldn't happen again. Not by being a better roommate, not by picking better situations, by ensuring that whoever he lived with next would never be in a position to do to him what he felt had been done to him, by getting there first, by making himself impossible to get rid of. By, in his words, and these are his actual words from post 3, controlling the dynamic before the other person realizes there's a dynamic to control. He'd started that process on week 1 of living with you. Let me take you through what's actually in these posts because the summary doesn't capture it. The summary sounds like paranoid roommate documents his anxiety. The reality is more specific and more calculated than that. The posts are written in the style of a project manager's update log. That's the best way to describe it. Each one has a month update header, a summary of actions taken, a section on relationship status, meaning how he assessed the state of his relationship with you, and a notes section. He wrote these consistently, roughly once a month, occasionally twice when something significant happened. 23 posts over 18 months. He always deleted them within 24 hours of posting. He was clearly using the Reddit post format as a thinking tool, drafting his thoughts, getting feedback, deleting before anything could be traced back. The most recent post, month 18, is the one titled, "He Finally Trusts Me Completely." Here's what it says in the parts you can read before your brain starts having to take breaks. Month 18 check-in. This has been the most successful phase of the project so far. He's completely unguarded around me now. He talks about work stress, personal stuff, future plans. He introduced me to his friends last month, which I consider a significant milestone because it means he doesn't see me as a risk. I've continued the small actions from previous months, covering for him with the landlord on the heating issue, mentioning his name positively to the building manager, the usual groundwork. I feel completely secure in my position here. He has no idea I've been doing any of this, and I don't think he ever will. If anything changes, I'm prepared, but I don't see anything changing. Target status, fully secured. Target status, fully secured. These are words someone uses about a mark. These are words from a plan, and they're being used to describe the man you share a kitchen with every morning. You sit with that language for a while. You read it again. And then you go further back, month 16. He asked if I wanted to grab food tonight. I said yes. 3 hours with him, good data on his patterns. He talks about his ex when he's had more than 2 drinks. Filed that away. Filed that away. You took him out for his birthday 2 months ago. You paid for the round that put him over 2 drinks. You talked about Emma because you'd had enough to get there. You remember that night as a good night. Real one. The kind of night where you come home feeling like you made the right call, trusting this person. He came home and added it to a project log. Month 14. He told me about the issue with his sister, the one he's been stressed about for the past few months. This is the most personal thing he's shared. I listened without advising. That was the right call. He seemed relieved. This is good for my position. You told him about your sister. That was a hard period. You told him because you were stressed and he'd seem safe, and sometimes you just need to say things out loud to another person who isn't involved. He'd been good about it. He'd listened. He hadn't advised. You thought afterward that it was nice he didn't try to fix it. Just let you talk. Turned out the reason he didn't advise is because he'd already made the calculation that not advising was the strategically better move for his position. Wolf, something to note. He mentioned his work situation is unstable, possible layoffs. This could affect his ability to pay rent, which would affect the stability of this arrangement. I've started thinking about contingency moves just in case. If he loses the job and can't cover rent, I may need to approach the landlord directly to secure my position in the apartment independently of him. Have started building a relationship with the building manager separately. Still early stages. He was your roommate. You told him you were worried about work. The kind of thing you tell someone you live with when you're carrying something and you need to say it. And he'd taken that information and turned it into a contingency plan. He'd started quietly building a relationship with your building manager independently without you knowing, as a preemptive move in case he needed to outmaneuver you on the lease. He'd been doing that for 6 months. The building manager you thought was just your building manager. You are reading all of this at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Marcus gets home at 8:23, and you still have 11 more posts to go. Okay, so here's where I need to be precise. Because the question you're probably asking right now, that I was asking when I first encountered this story, is what did he actually do? Beyond the documentation, beyond the logging and the filing it away, what did he actually do to you concretely? Here's what the posts reveal when you read them in the right order and cross-reference them against your own memory of the past 18 months. The heating issue. For of the tenancy, you'd gone to the landlord about the heating. You'd had a pretty direct conversation with him that ended with the landlord being short with you about it. You'd come away from that conversation feeling like you'd somehow put yourself on the wrong side of the landlord's opinion. You couldn't figure out why at the time. On 4 post. I spoke to the landlord yesterday, independently of him. I mentioned the heating issue as if it had been primarily his complaint, not mine, and implied he'd been difficult about it. The landlord seemed to take this on board. I made sure to be amenable and reasonable in contrast. Good positioning move. He'd gotten to your landlord first. He'd framed you as the difficult tenant and positioned himself as the reasonable one. Before you'd even had your conversation, you'd walked into that meeting already in a hole you didn't know existed, the job thing, months 12 to 15 when you were dealing with the work uncertainty. You'd been more stressed than usual. Coming home tight, not great company sometimes. You'd apologize once to Marcus for snapping. He'd been gracious about it. On 13 post, he apologized for his behavior last week. I accepted warmly. I've used these incidents to document his instability in my notes in case I need to demonstrate to the landlord or anyone else that he's been difficult to live with. 3 incidents now on file. He was keeping a secondary file of your stress moments in case he ever needed to use them. The social stuff. When he met your friends, the birthday thing, the couple of group hangs. You'd introduced him because that's what you do when you live with someone and you like them well enough, you bring them into your world a little. On 16 post, I've now been introduced to his core social group. Good intelligence on his relationships and social standing. Also good for my own credibility if this ever becomes a he said situation, mutual friends matter. I've made sure to make a positive impression on all of them. He was collecting social capital in your network. Strategically. As an insurance policy. Your friends who said, hey, Marcus seems like a solid guy. He'd been working on them. Consciously. As part of the plan. Stated plainly. Marcus moved into your apartment and immediately began treating you as a project. He documented your vulnerabilities. He got ahead of you with your landlord. He collected information about your personal life and filed it for potential use. He built a secondary file of your difficult moments. He worked your social network. He did all of this for 18 months while splitting the Wi-Fi bill with you and asking how your day was. Here's where you get to the beginning. The post you find at the bottom of the archive, the oldest one, the first one he ever wrote. Dated 3 weeks after he moved in. Title, Week 1 Update, Initial Assessment Complete. Here's what it says. Moving in was smooth. He's trusting by nature. This is going to be easier than I thought. He talks openly. He shares information. He treats me like a friend already. That's valuable. Previous situation taught me that the person who has the information has the control. I've started building the information base. Key things so far, he values loyalty and gets bothered when he feels dismissed. His work situation seems stable, but he's worried about something with his family. He's the kind of person who wants to be liked and takes it personally when he isn't. All useful. The goal is to make myself essential to this arrangement before he realizes I should be evaluating whether he's essential to mine. 1 Plan. Establish trust baseline. 1.3 Begin landlord positioning. Long-term, ensure that if anything ever goes sideways, I'm the one with the structural advantage. Target secured at week 1. This is going to work. 3 weeks. You'd had him for 3 weeks and he'd written a profiling document about you. He'd identified your trust patterns, your emotional sensitivities, your relational needs. He'd developed a multi-month plan based on those observations. And he'd called you target on week 1. He'd been your roommate for 18 months. For 18 months, you'd thought this was a functional living situation. For 18 months, you thought this man was just a decent guy who happened to live in the same apartment. You told a friend he was a decent guy. You know when you said that? Month 9 of this post archive. Right in the middle of it. And here's the R4 return, the planted detail that comes back. Furniture. 2 months ago, he'd mentioned he was trying to move a bookshelf in his room and asked if you could help him. You'd spent 40 minutes helping him rearrange his furniture. You'd even helped him put some books back on the shelf after. It had been genuinely a nice 40 minutes. Good-natured ribbing about his book collection, laughing when a shelf slipped. You'd thought afterward, we're actually decent together, me and him. Month 16 post, he helped me with the bookshelf tonight. Classic bonding activity. Trust baseline confirmed at highest level yet. He's completely comfortable. This is where I wanted to be. He had engineered that 40 minutes. The bookshelf wasn't an accident. The ask wasn't random, but he'd used it specifically because helping someone move furniture is one of the most trust-establishing activities two people can share. He knew that. He'd said it plainly in a Reddit post he deleted the next day, while you were still thinking about what a nice 40 minutes it had been. Okay, so the question I kept coming back to reading this story is, what kind of person does this? Not in a dismissive way, not he's just crazy or he's a sociopath, and that's the end of it. What kind of person genuinely moves into a stranger's apartment and immediately starts treating them as a strategic target? Here's what you piece together from the posts across the 18 months. Marcus had been genuinely hurt in that previous living situation. Not hypothetically, actually hurt. He'd been in an apartment he loved with a person he thought was a friend, and it had collapsed in a way that left him with nothing and felt completely outside his control. He'd lost the home, the friend, the deposit. And somewhere in the processing of that loss, his brain had made a specific decision. Never again would he be the person without the information, without the positioning, without the structural protection. He turned a legitimate wound into a system. That didn't make what he did okay. You need to be clear about that, and you are sitting in that kitchen chair reading. He treated you like a problem to be managed before you'd done anything to him. He built a case against you that didn't need to exist. He harvested your vulnerabilities and filed them for deployment. He corrupted the small ordinary moments, the furniture, the birthday dinner, the conversation about your sister, by using them as intelligence. But the guy who's afraid of being blindsided again, you understand that guy. You don't like him, not right now, not sitting here with 18 months of your own private life laid out in someone else's project log. But you understand how fear of something creates the exact behavior that makes the feared thing more likely. He was so afraid of being the one without control that he built a control system that, when you found it, destroyed the one thing he'd actually built, a functional living situation with someone who genuinely thought well of him. The thing he feared happened anyway, just from the other direction, because he forgot to log out of Reddit on a Tuesday. Here's the thing about how you handle this that I think is important, because the instinct would be to confront him immediately. He walks in at 8:23 and you've had the laptop open for an hour and 47 minutes and you've just read every post and you know everything, and the immediate instinct is say something. Confront him. Put it on the table. But you don't. You close the laptop. You say, pretty good, yours. And you sit with it for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of pretending. 2 weeks of deciding what you want from this. Because that's the actual question, right? What do you want to happen? He hasn't broken a law. He's been weird and calculated and deeply unsettling, but being weird and calculated and deeply unsettling isn't illegal. The landlord positioning, that's manipulative but not actionable. The target language, disturbing but not criminal. He's a man who was afraid and built a coping system that was too invasive and too private and too cold. You have his Reddit archive. He doesn't know you have it. And you need to think about what having it means before you use it. Win then test. You have the information, win. But using it means choosing how this ends, and every choice has consequences you have to be willing to live with. 2 weeks of going about your life. Normal mornings, or normal evenings. Marcus making coffee in the kitchen, you doing the same. Except now you see it. Every small interaction, the question about your day, the comment about a show, the casual mention of having spoken to the building manager, you see the machinery in it. You wonder how much of the last 18 months you'd read as genuine that was actually calculated. You wonder if any of it was genuine. You don't know. The posts don't fully resolve that question, and neither can you. At the end of week 2, you decide. You're not going to confront him directly. You're going to end the arrangement cleanly on your terms without giving him the structural fight he's been preparing for. Because here's the thing about someone who spent 18 months preparing for a conflict. You deliver the conflict on his terms, he'll probably win it. He's been preparing. You haven't. But you have something he doesn't have. He doesn't know you know. And that gap is the only leverage you need. You go to the landlord. Before Marcus, you explain that you want to renegotiate the lease, specifically that you want to move to a single-tenant arrangement. You mention, factually and without drama, that you've had some concerns about your current living situation. You don't bring up the Reddit archive. You don't need to. You just establish that you want out of the shared arrangement and that you're willing to absorb the rent increase to do it. You put yourself in the conversation first. On your terms. Before Marcus's months of building a relationship with the building manager can be deployed against you. Plant returns as weapon. Marcus had spent 18 months getting ahead of you. He'd built a case. He'd positioned himself. He'd prepared. All of that preparation relied on you not knowing it was happening. The moment you knew, the moment the laptop was open on the table and you sat down and read everything, every single one of his advantages vanished simultaneously. He'd built a plan around a version of you who didn't have the information. You had the information. His plan didn't work on the actual you. The landlord conversation goes well. You end up with a single-tenant arrangement at a rent you can handle. You give Marcus the 60-day notice to vacate that the lease requires. You don't tell him why. I've decided I want to live alone. For a while. That's what you say, which is true, by the way, completely true. Marcus moved out on a Saturday morning 62 days later. You helped him carry a few boxes to the rental van he'd hired. Not because you owed him that. Because you're the kind of person who helps people move boxes. Even this one. Even now. He seemed confused by how clean the ending was. You could see him looking for the conflict, the confrontation, the accusation, the moment where 18 months of preparation would be called into service. It didn't come. You were just a guy helping another guy carry boxes on a Saturday morning. Normal. Ordinary. He'd built 18 months of strategy against an opponent who just handed him his boxes and said, "Drive safe." Calmly, Marcus Holloway, that's his full name, you know it from the lease, left the apartment he'd spent 18 months securing his position in. He left with his boxes and his books and his file of your difficult moments, none of which he ever got to use. His building manager relationship never needed to be activated. His secondary documentation never became relevant. His target secured notation in month 18 was the last post before the archive went dead. He never knew you'd read it. You have no idea if he ever will. Maybe on some Tuesday when he's thinking about what went wrong with the arrangement, he'll check whether the laptop was ever compromised. Maybe not. Either way, it's not your problem anymore. He'd spent 18 months preparing for a fight. You ended it with 60 days notice and a van. You live alone now. That's just more expensive. You adjusted your budget and it works. The apartment feels different when you're the only person in it. Quieter, obviously, but also something else. Or like yours. The second bedroom is currently a home gym. It'll probably go back to a bedroom eventually when the rent math starts to really push. But for now, just yours. You think about Marcus sometimes. Not with anger. The anger kind of peaked somewhere around week 2 and then faded as you got to work on the practical solution. You think about him more with a kind of unsettled curiosity about whether the new arrangement he's in is another project, whether whoever he's living with now is a target, whether the loop starts over. You can't do anything about that and you know it, so you let it sit in the things I'll never know category. The thing you think about most, honestly, is the Tuesday. The specific, random Tuesday when you got home 43 minutes early. The meeting that ended early, the traffic that was okay, the 43-minute difference that meant you were there when the laptop was open instead of when it was closed. You run the math on all the Tuesdays you didn't come home early. All the times the arrangement could have just ended normally, lease up, both move on, no information exchanged. You'd have thought of him as the decent roommate. Honestly, I got lucky. Solid guy. You'd have said that. You'd have meant it. You don't know if knowing is better than not knowing. Some days it is. Some days it's just the price of the information. Here's the question I keep sitting with on this one. And I mean this seriously, I don't have a clean answer. Curtis wasn't trying to physically harm anyone. He wasn't trying to steal. What he was doing was building a protection system that was so invasive and so deliberate that it essentially poisoned the entire arrangement retroactively once you knew. The bookshelf moment that felt like a real thing is now not that. The birthday dinner is not that. The conversation about your sister. All of the small genuine moments, or what you thought were genuine moments, they exist in this weird superposition now where you don't actually know if any of them were real or all of them were strategic. Maybe they were both. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe you can be executing a plan and also genuinely enjoy the conversation at the birthday dinner. Maybe those aren't mutually exclusive. Maybe that's what makes this harder to resolve than the simple version would be. Here's what I want to know from you. Would you have confronted him? Given everything, the archive, the posts, the target language, the building manager relationship, would you have put it all on the table, or would you have done what was done here and ended it quietly and let him leave not knowing you knew? I genuinely want to hear from men on this one. Drop it below. I read every comment in the first 2 hours. I'll be there. Subscribe if this story sat with you somewhere uncomfortable. New story every Thursday. 10th person. You're always the man it happened to. And always the man who gets to decide what to do with what he finds. These are the stories nobody planned to tell. That's why they feel the way they do.